Clerical celibacy is the requirement in certain religions that some or all members of the clergy be unmarried. These religions consider that, outside of marriage, deliberate sexual thoughts, feelings, and behavior are sinful. Clerical celibacy also requires abstention from these. Within the Roman Catholic Church, clerical celibacy is mandated for all clergy in the Latin Church except deacons who do not intend to become priests. Exceptions are sometimes admitted for ordination to transitional diaconate and priesthood on a case-by-case basis for married clergymen of other churches or communities who become Catholics, but ordination of married men to the episcopacy is excluded. Clerical marriage is not allowed, and therefore, if those for whom in some particular church celibacy is optional wish to marry, they must do so before ordination. Eastern Catholic churches either follow the same rules as the Latin Church or require celibacy for bishops while allowing priestly ordination of married men. In the Eastern Orthodox Church and Oriental Orthodoxy, celibacy is the norm for bishops. Married men may be ordained to the priesthood, but even married priests whose wives predeceased them are not allowed to enter marriage after ordination. Similarly, celibacy is not a requirement for ordination as a deacon, and in some Oriental Orthodox churches deacons may marry after ordination. For a period in the 5th and early 6th centuries, the Church of the East did not apply the rule of celibacy even for ordination to the episcopate. Anglicanism and Protestantism in general do not require celibacy of its clergy and allow clerical marriage. Meanings of celibacy. The word celibacy can mean either the state of being unmarried or abstinence, especially because of religious vows, from sexual intercourse. In the canon law of the Latin Church, the word celibacy is used specifically in the sense of being unmarried. Clerics are obliged to observe perfect and perpetual continence for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, and therefore are bound to celibacy, which is a special gift of God by which sacred ministers can adhere more easily to Christ with an undivided heart and are able to dedicate themselves more freely to the service of God and humanity. Permanent deacons, namely those deacons who are not intended to become priests, are, in general, exempted from this rule. But married permanent deacons are not allowed to remarry after the death of their spouse. The Catechism of the Catholic Church states, all the ordained ministers of the Latin Church, with the exception of permanent deacons, are normally chosen from among men of faith who live a celibate life and who intend to remain celibate for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Called to consecrate themselves with undivided heart to the Lord and to the affairs of the Lord, they give themselves entirely to God and to men. Celibacy is a sign of this new life to the service of which the Church as minister is consecrated. Accepted with a joyous heart, celibacy radiantly proclaims the reign of God. In the Eastern churches a different discipline has been in force for many centuries. While bishops are chosen solely from among celibates, married men can be ordained as deacons and priests. This practice has long been considered legitimate. These priests exercise a fruitful ministry within the communities. In the East as in the West, a man who has already received the sacrament of holy orders can no longer marry. On the granting of permission, by exception, for the priestly ordination of married men in the Latin Church, see rules below. Background. In some Christian churches, such as the Western and some Eastern sections of the Catholic Church, priests and bishops must as a rule be unmarried men. In others, such as the Eastern Orthodox Church, the churches of Oriental Orthodoxy and some of the Eastern Catholic churches, married men may be ordained as deacons or priests, but may not remarry if their wife dies, and celibacy is required only of bishops. Since celibacy is seen as a consequence of the obligation of continence, it implies abstinence from sexual relationships. The Code of Canon Law prescribes clerics are to behave with due prudence towards persons whose company can endanger their obligation to observe continence or give rise to scandal among the faithful. In some Christian churches, a vow of chastity is made by members of religious orders or monastic communities. along with vows of poverty and obedience, in order to imitate the life of Jesus of Nazareth. This vow of chastity, made by people not all of whom are clergy, is different from what is the obligation, not a vow, of clerical continence and celibacy. Celibacy for religious and monastics and for bishops is upheld by the Catholic Church in the traditions of both Eastern Orthodoxy and Oriental Orthodoxy. Bishops must be unmarried men or widowers. A married man cannot become a bishop. In Latin Church Catholicism and in some Eastern Catholic churches, most priests are celibate men. Exceptions are admitted, and there are over 200 married Catholic priests who converted from the Anglican Communion and Protestant faiths. In most Orthodox traditions and in some Eastern Catholic churches, men who are already married may be ordained priests, but priests may not marry after ordination. Neither the Catholic nor the Orthodox tradition considers the rule of clerical celibacy to be an unchangeable dogma, but instead is a rule that could be adjusted if the Church thought it appropriate, and to which exceptions are admitted. From the time of the First Ecumenical Council, the Christian Church forbids voluntary physical castration, and the alleged self-castration of the theologian Origen was used to discredit him.